The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the largest gathering in their recorded history. Representatives from all 47 member species had assembled within 12 hours of receiving humanity's message. The massive crystal chamber, buzzed with nervous energy, as translator drones worked overtime to handle the unprecedented volume of urgent communications. Zephyr Prime Valdris, now ancient even by ethereal standards, floated in the center of the chamber with all 4 arms, trembling slightly. The being that had pronounced humanity's ban a century earlier could barely process what the latest reports were telling them. "This is impossible," Valdris whispered through the translation network. The humans were contained to their solar system. Ambassador Jake Morrison walked into the chamber with steady steps, but this time everything was different. He was no longer the young diplomat who had pleaded for humanity's acceptance. Now in his 70s, Morrison carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man representing a major galactic power. Behind him walked Captain Danny Walsh and a delegation that wore uniforms unlike anything the Council had seen before. The ships that had brought the human delegation were visible through the chamber's transparent walls. The TFS Horizon and her escort fleet hung in space like predators made of metal and energy. Their sleek forms seemed to bend light around them, and Council sensors could barely detect their presence, even though they were clearly visible to the naked eye. "Honored representatives," Morrison began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber without any need for amplification. "It has been exactly 103 years since you last saw fit to judge humanity. We have returned to discuss the current state of galactic affairs." The Corvani representative, a descendant of the one who had spoken against humanity a century earlier, stood with obvious agitation. "You were banned from Council space. Your presence here is a violation of the Galactic Accords. You should be arrested immediately." Morrison smiled calmly. "Representative Thorne, we are not violating any accords. We are exercising our rights as a sovereign interstellar power. Perhaps you should check your recent survey reports from the Kepler system before making accusations." Captain Walsh activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. The image showed a 3-dimensional map of known space, but now it included dozens of systems marked with human symbols. The display revealed the true scope of humanity's expansion across the galaxy. "These are our current territorial holdings," Walsh announced. 43 fully developed worlds, 16 mining systems, and numerous research stations throughout, sectors you considered worthless. "We've been very busy during our isolation." The chamber erupted in confused chatter as representatives tried to process what they were seeing. The humans had not simply survived their ban, they had thrived beyond anything the Council thought possible. The map showed human presence in regions of space the Council had never bothered to explore. Senator Kyle Tarr of the Zenthan hegemony spoke with barely controlled shock. "These systems are outside Council jurisdiction. How did you reach them without faster-than-light technology?" Morrison gestured to Walsh, who brought up technical specifications that made the Council scientists lean forward in disbelief. "We developed our own methods of interstellar travel. The Prometheus drive allows us to fold space without requiring exotic matter. It's actually superior to your current technology in several ways." Dr. Nathan Cross, now serving as humanity's chief science advisor, stepped forward to explain. "Your species have become dependent on a single approach to physics. When you denied us access to exotic matter, we were forced to find alternatives. The results exceeded our wildest expectations. The demonstration that followed shattered every assumption the Council had about human capabilities." A small human probe appeared in the chamber, having materialized through what could only be described as controlled teleportation. It projected holographic images of human colonies, showing garden worlds that had been transformed from barren rock in mere decades. "Terraforming technology," Cross explained, as images of thriving ecosystems flashed through the chamber. We can transform dead worlds into garden planets in 50 years or less. Your fastest terraforming projects take centuries and require massive resource investments. The military demonstrations were even more shocking. Human ships performed maneuvers that violated everything the Council knew about physics. They seemed to accelerate beyond light speed without entering hyperspace, appearing and disappearing at will throughout the system. Admiral Sarah Kim provided the tactical analysis that left the Council speechless. Your combined military forces consist of approximately 12,000 vessels designed primarily for patrol and peacekeeping duties. The Terran Federation currently operates 47,000 ships, each incorporating technology you cannot counter or detect. Intelligence Director Chris Martinez revealed the extent of human surveillance capabilities. We have been monitoring Council activities for the past 50 years. Every diplomatic meeting, every military movement, every technological development has been observed and recorded. We know more about your capabilities than you do. The final revelation came when Morrison activated a communication device that connected directly to Earth. Fleet Admiral Ryan Carter, please report on Operation Homewatch. Carter's voice came through clearly from humanity's home system. All Earth defenses are operational and at full readiness. The Sol system is now protected by defensive systems that make it effectively impregnable to any conceivable attack. We estimate that the entire Council fleet would be unable to penetrate our outer defensive perimeter. The psychological impact was devastating. The species that had been judged too dangerous for galactic civilization had become the most powerful military force in known space. The humans had not conquered through aggression, but through innovation driven by necessity. Representative Sil Wynn of the Melloran Commonwealth spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. What do you want from us? Morrison's expression grew serious. We want what we have always wanted, recognition as equals in the galactic community. But the terms have changed considerably since our last meeting. The negotiations that followed would reshape the political structure of the galaxy. Humanity was no longer asking for membership in the existing order. They were proposing an entirely new framework with themselves as a major power alongside the traditional Council species. The old system failed, Morrison explained to the stunned assembly. Your Council became complacent, stagnant, afraid of change. Humanity represents evolution, adaptation, progress. We offer partnership to species willing to embrace a better future. Some Council species immediately recognized the reality of their situation and began discussing terms for joining the new order. Others resisted, clinging to the old ways that had kept them comfortable for centuries. But as more reports came in about human capabilities and territorial holdings, resistance began to crumble. When the session ended, the galaxy had been fundamentally changed. The Galactic Council's greatest mistake had not been underestimating humanity's potential for violence. It had been underestimating their potential for growth, adaptation, and ultimately, leadership. The species that had been deemed too dangerous for civilization had become its most capable guardians. 5 years after the historic Council session, the galaxy looked completely different. The old Galactic Council station had been decommissioned and replaced by Nexus Prime, a massive space habitat built using human construction techniques that dwarfed anything the former Council had ever imagined possible. President Amanda Foster stood in the central command chamber of Nexus Prime, looking out at the bustling activity of the new galactic capital. Ships from dozens of species moved through the traffic lanes in perfect coordination, guided by human-designed navigation systems that eliminated the congestion problems that had plagued the old station for centuries. The transition had not been smooth. 18 of the former Council species had initially refused to join the new Galactic Union, clinging to their old ways and territories. But economic pressure and the simple reality of human technological superiority had gradually worn down their resistance. Admiral Marcus Wright commanded the peacekeeping fleet that patrolled the former Council territories. His ships were not weapons of conquest, but tools of protection, ensuring that trade flowed freely and that conflicts between species were resolved through negotiation rather than violence. The Xanthan hegemony has officially requested membership in the Union, Wright reported during the morning briefing. That leaves only the Corvani Republic and 3 minor species holding out against the new order. The economic transformation had been the most dramatic change. Human trade networks, originally designed to connect isolated colonies across vast distances, proved far more efficient than the bureaucratic systems the Council had used for centuries. Dr. Laura Thompson's economic models showed productivity increases throughout Union space that benefited every member species. Trade volume has increased by 340% since the Union was established, Thompson reported to the Assembly. Member species are experiencing prosperity levels unprecedented in galactic history. The old council system was holding everyone back. Foreign Minister Peter Davis handled the delicate negotiations with species that were still adjusting to human leadership. The Ethereal Collective has agreed to share their consciousness-linking technology in exchange for access to our terraforming techniques. The Melaran Commonwealth wants to establish joint agricultural colonies using our rapid growth plant variants. The greatest challenge had been convincing other species that humans were not interested in domination. The galaxy had operated under authoritarian systems for so long that the concept of true partnership was difficult to understand. Human leaders had to constantly demonstrate that they meant what they said about equality and cooperation. Lieutenant Commander Tony Rivera, now serving as Foster's chief aide, brought reports from the integration committees. The joint research projects are exceeding all expectations. Combining human innovation with alien expertise is producing breakthrough technologies none of us could have developed alone. The research stations scattered throughout Union space were working on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. Human drive technology, combined with ethereal consciousness networks, was creating communication systems that worked instantly across galactic distances. Xanthan metallurgy merged with human engineering was producing materials stronger than anything previously known. Dr. Rachel Stone, now director of the Interspecies Biological Institute, presented her latest findings to the Assembly. We've successfully created hybrid ecosystems that can support multiple species simultaneously. Worlds that were previously suitable for only one type of life can now host diverse communities. The terraforming projects had become joint ventures between multiple species. Human rapid transformation techniques were combined with alien expertise in specific environments to create worlds that were better than anything any single species could have built alone. The result was a boom in colonization that was spreading life throughout previously empty regions of space. Jake Morrison, now serving as Director of Interspecies Relations, reflected on how much had changed since that first disastrous council session. The old council made decisions based on fear and prejudice. The Union makes decisions based on evidence and mutual benefit. The difference in results speaks for itself. The former council species were adapting to the new reality at different rates. Some had embraced human partnership enthusiastically and were thriving under the new system. Others remained suspicious and maintained minimal contact while still technically being Union members. Captain Walsh, now commanding the exploration fleet, brought news from the Galactic Rim territories. We've made contact with 3 new species in the outer spiral arms. 2 are interested in Union membership. The 3rd is requesting protection from pirates that have been raiding their shipping. The expansion of Union influence was driven not by conquest, but by reputation. Species throughout the galaxy had heard about the prosperity and security that Union membership provided. The application process was backed up for months as civilizations requested evaluation for membership. Admiral Wright's security briefing revealed the extent of the transformation. Piracy in Union space has decreased by 91%. Territorial disputes between member species have been reduced to 0. The peacekeeping fleet has not fired a shot in anger for 18 months. The human approach to galactic leadership was fundamentally different from anything that had come before. Instead of ruling through force or bureaucracy, humans led through innovation and example. They solved problems rather than managing them, and they shared solutions freely with anyone willing to cooperate. President Foster addressed the monthly assembly meeting with representatives from 43 species. The Union has exceeded every goal we set when it was founded. Member species are more prosperous, more secure, and more free than they have ever been. But our greatest achievement is not what we have built, but what we have learned to build together. The irony was not lost on Morrison as he watched the diverse assembly work through complex issues with efficiency the old council had never achieved. They feared our emotional nature and our unpredictability. They thought these traits made us dangerous. Instead, our emotions drive us to care about others, and our adaptability lets us find solutions to problems they couldn't even imagine. The Galactic Union represented something entirely new in the history of the galaxy. It was not an empire built on conquest or a confederation held together by mutual fear. It was a genuine partnership between species that had learned to value differences as strengths rather than threats. As Foster looked out at the thriving activity of Nexus Prime, she could see ships from species that had been enemies for centuries working together on joint projects. Human innovation had not just created new technologies, it had created new possibilities for cooperation that were transforming the entire galaxy. The species that had been judged too dangerous for civilization had become the architects of a new, golden age. The Council's greatest failure had been their inability to see that humanity's greatest strength was not their capacity for violence, but their capacity for growth, adaptation, and ultimately, bringing out the best in others. The galaxy that had once feared humanity now looked to them for leadership, and humanity had proven worthy of that trust. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the huge shining halls of the Galactic Council building, and his old hands were locked behind his back, while Ambassador Lisa Carter spoke to all the alien visitors who were there. The big round room was full of nervous energy as hundreds of different alien types watched through their translation screens and their many different body parts, and eyes were all focused on the small human group. Lisa announced that the United Earth Federation said no to the tribute. Demand, and her voice carried clearly through the room's special sound system. The words hung in the air like a bomb that was ready to explode. High Counselor Zektar of the Vorthon Empire was a very tall lizard creature with golden scales, and he leaned forward because he could not believe what he heard. For 3,000 years, every species that joined the Galactic Council had paid tribute to the founding races. The tribute system kept order and paid for galactic roads, and most importantly, it showed proper giving up to the established order. Zektar said it was impossible, and his snake tongue came out to taste the air. He said humans did not have enough military power to refuse. He said they only had 12 star systems and a few basic ships. Lisa smiled, and this face expression made several nearby visitors move uncomfortably. Humans had joined the Galactic Community only 50 years ago, but their name for being unpredictable had already spread throughout known space. Dr. Alan Brooks was Earth's chief alien life scientist, and he stepped forward with a data pad. He said they had studied the tribute system very carefully. In exchange for protection and trade rights, member species gave up 30% of their total planetary money plus raw materials plus military soldiers. In return, they got limited say in government and the right to exist under council protection. Counselor Thexvia of the crystal-like Nexari made a musical sound as she spoke, and light bent through her clear body. She said the system had kept peace for thousands of years, and surely humans understood the good things about stability. Captain Morrison finally spoke, and his rough voice cut through the room. He said they understood perfectly, and they also understood that protection rackets went out of style on Earth about 400 years ago. The room exploded in shocked talking. Translation machines worked very hard as visitors tried to process the human idea of a protection racket. Several species had never met such organized fighting back. Admiral Helen Grant was Earth's military representative, and she turned on a light display showing human space. She said their study showed that the tribute system mainly helped the founding races while keeping newer species in never-ending economic slavery. She said, quite frankly, they were not interested. High Counselor Zektar's golden scales became darker with anger. He said, how dare humans compare the sacred tribute system to basic criminal businesses, and said their rudeness would not be allowed. Lisa Carter stayed calm, and her diplomatic training showed. She said they were not questioning the rightness of the council government. She said they were simply using their right as a free species to say no to a system they found economically bad. Counselor Vexmore of the insect-like Hive Collective made angry clicking sounds with his mouth parts. He said, there was no right to refuse, and tribute was not optional because it was the foundation of galactic civilization. Dr. Brooks looked at his data pad again. He said, according to the Galactic Charter Article 7, Section 12, newly admitted species had a grace period of 1 standard galactic year to look at their participation terms, and they were using that right. The room became silent because the humans had done their homework. Lisa continued and said furthermore they had found several concerning patterns in the tribute system. The founding races used 67% of collected tribute for themselves, while actual galactic roads got only 14%. The remaining 19% went to administrative costs that seemed remarkably high. High Counselor Zektar rose to his full height of nearly 4 meters. He said, how dare humans question their financial management, and the Vorthan Empire had guided this galaxy for 3,000 years. Admiral Grant replied dryly that they had done a remarkable job of making themselves rich in the process. She said their economic study suggested that most member species would be much wealthier without tribute obligations. The meaning of that statement spread through the room like a shock wave. Hundreds of species began quickly calculating their own tribute payments against received benefits. Counselor Thexivia's crystal body became brighter with worry. She said the humans wanted to destroy the very foundations of galactic peace, and without the tribute system, chaos would return. Captain Morrison stepped forward, and his hand rested casually on his weapon. He said, or maybe just maybe species would learn to work together without having their lunch money stolen by galactic bullies. Zektar declared this was madness, and no species had ever refused tribute and survived. He said human 12 systems would be blocked and their trade routes cut, and their colonies isolated until they saw reason. Lisa Carter smiled again, and this time her expression was positively hunting-like. She said, High Counselor, she thought he misunderstood their position because they were not asking for his permission to refuse tribute, but were telling him of their decision. Vexmore clicked frantically and said, humans could not survive without galactic trade because their species lacked the resources for true independence. Dr. Brooks turned on another light display. He said actually their economic predictions showed that Earth and their colonies would be 32% more successful within 10 years without tribute obligations. He said they had also found 17 other species whose economic situations would improve dramatically if they withdrew from the tribute system. The room erupted in chaos as visitors began shouting in dozens of languages. The very idea that the tribute system might be economically bad for member species had never been publicly discussed. Admiral Grant raised her voice over the noise. She said the United Earth Federation was prepared to offer mutual defense treaties and fair trade agreements to any species interested in alternatives to the current system. High Counselor Zektar's roar made the room silent. He said enough, and the humans had made their choice, so be it. He told security forces to escort these rebels from the room and let them return to their pathetic systems and prepare for the results of their pride. As security robots began moving toward the human group, Captain Morrison did not move. He said they would leave peacefully, but understand this, that humanity did not respond well to threats. He said, "Push us, and you might discover why we are the only species to ever completely remove our own natural predators." The human group walked calmly from the room, leaving behind a galaxy in trouble. The tribute system that had been unchallenged for 3,000 years had just received its first serious opposition, and in the darkest corners of the galaxy, other species began asking dangerous questions about whether protection was worth the price they were paying. 3 months after humanity's dramatic refusal, the Galactic Council's response arrived in human space with overwhelming force. Admiral Kate Phillips stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched as nearly 300 alien warships took positions around Earth's solar system. She muttered to her tactical officer, Commander Rick Powell, that they were certainly making their point. The blockade fleet represented the largest military operation in recent galactic history. Sleek Vorthan dreadnoughts had many energy weapons, while Nexari crystal ships hung in space like deadly geometric sculptures. Hive collective vessels moved in complex patterns, and their bioorganic hulls pulsed with alien life. High Admiral Zexkar, who was Zektar's military cousin, sent messages on all human frequencies. He said, "Attention, human rebels, your defiance ends now." He said, "Surrender your leadership for trial and agree to double tribute payments for your rudeness, and your species may yet survive this foolishness." President Matt Sullivan was broadcasting from Earth's capital and responded with typical human directness. He said, "Admiral, you can take your ultimatum and file it under rejected because Earth does not negotiate with extortionists." Dr. Susan Wright was now Earth's Director of Alien Affairs and had spent months preparing for this moment. Her team had analyzed every known alien military technology and found weaknesses and developed countermeasures. She reported to Admiral Phillips that their formation was designed for maximum psychological impact and was classic intimidation tactics. The Vorthan ships were positioned to demonstrate their firepower, while the Hive vessels created the impression of overwhelming numbers. Commander Powell studied his tactical displays and said, "Ma'am, their actual combat effectiveness was lower than appearances suggested." The different species had not trained together extensively, and their coordination protocols were based on hierarchy rather than efficiency. Admiral Phillips nodded grimly. Humanity's military doctrine emphasized adaptability and technological innovation over brute force. While Earth's fleet was smaller, every ship had cutting-edge technology developed during humanity's rapid expansion into space. The first test came when Vorthan patrol ships tried to intercept a human cargo vessel returning from the Alpha Centauri colonies. Captain Linda Hayes commanded the merchant ship Aurora and found herself surrounded by 3 alien interceptors. The Vorthan squadron leader demanded surrender your cargo for inspection because all trade with human systems was prohibited. Captain Hayes turned on her ship's defensive systems. The Aurora was not a warship, but like all human vessels, it had been fitted with advanced shielding and weapons after humanity's first encounters with hostile alien pirates. She said, "Negative alien vessel because this cargo belongs to human colonies, transported by human ships through human space, and you have no jurisdiction here." The Vorthan commander was trained in thousands of years of tradition where superior technology guaranteed compliance and fired a warning shot across the Auroras. Bow. The plasma bolt struck the merchant ship's shields and simply disappeared. The alien muttered impossible because no merchant vessel should possess such defensive capabilities. Captain Hayes smiled coldly and said, "You have been bullying species. With inferior technology for so long, you forgot what happens when you meet someone who can fight back." The Aurora's return fire disabled 2 Vorthan ships and sent the third limping back to the main fleet. News of the fight spread throughout the blockade, causing considerable worry among alien commanders who had expected easy intimidation. Admiral Phillips received reports of similar incidents throughout the system. Human ships refused to acknowledge blockade authority and defended themselves when threatened and demonstrated technological capabilities that surprised their attackers. On Earth, President Sullivan addressed the global population. He said, "Citizens of Earth and our colonies, we face a test of our independence. The Galactic Council believes they can starve us into submission and force us to accept their protection racket through economic warfare. They are about to learn what happens when humans are backed into a corner. Dr. Wright's alien study teams had made a crucial discovery during their months of preparation. The tribute system's effectiveness relied heavily on member species dependence, on galactic trade networks controlled by the founding races. However, humanity had developed largely independently, creating self-sufficient supply chains and backup systems. She explained during a cabinet meeting that their blockade strategy assumes we need their permission to survive, but our agricultural systems are entirely self-contained, and our manufacturing is distributed across multiple star systems, and our resource extraction does not depend on galactic markets. General Paul Davis was chairman of Earth's Joint Chiefs and presented the military situation. He said our defensive capabilities exceed their expectations, but we are still outnumbered 50-1. If they coordinate a full assault, we will inflict heavy casualties but probably lose. Admiral Phillips replied over the communication link from her flagship that then we make sure they understand the cost. Every military academy in the galaxy studies the concept of Pyrrhic victory, and it was time to give them a practical demonstration. The stalemate continued for weeks, with the blockade fleet maintaining positions while human ships continued operating within the solar system. Tension escalated as more species watched the confrontation, and many quietly calculated their own potential for independence. The situation changed dramatically when the Kepler colony, which was humanity's newest settlement, came under direct attack. The Hive Collective was growing impatient with the standoff and sent a battle group to demonstrate consequences by destroying the lightly defended agricultural world. Captain Roy Mitchell commanded the colony's defense force and found himself facing 30 Hive warships with only 4 human frigates. The aliens expected quick surrender, followed by devastating bombardment to send a message to other human settlements. Instead, they encountered the first deployment of humanity's newest military technology. Quantum torpedoes that passed through conventional shields and adaptive AI defense systems that learned and countered alien tactics in real time, and electromagnetic pulse weapons that shut down bioorganic Hive technology. The Battle of Kepler lasted 6 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the Hive battle group. Not a single human ship was lost. News of the victory reached Earth just as High Admiral Zexkar was preparing to escalate the blockade to active bombardment. The Vorthon commander stared at tactical reports that defied everything he understood about military hierarchy. He demanded of his staff, how did primitives destroy an entire Hive battle group? His intelligence officer was a nervous Nexari named Kekvor and provided a chilling analysis. He said, Admiral, the humans appear to have developed military technology specifically designed to counter our conventional advantages. Their ships are smaller but more advanced, and their tactics are unpredictable, and their crews show remarkable adaptability under pressure. Admiral Phillips chose that moment to open communications with the blockade fleet. She said, Hi, Admiral Zexkar, this is Admiral Phillips of the United Earth Federation, and your Hive allies just learned what happens when you threaten human civilians, and would you like a similar demonstration? The challenge hung in space between the fleets like a gauntlet thrown down in an ancient duel. The galaxy watched and waited to see whether 3,000 years of galactic hierarchy could withstand humanity's stubborn refusal to submit. 6 months into the blockade, the galaxy began experiencing unprecedented upheaval. Species that had never questioned the tribute system started conducting economic analyses inspired by humanity's bold calculations and surprisingly successful resistance. Ambassador Lisa Carter was now operating from a hidden diplomatic facility on Mars and received her first secret visitor. Ambassador Veltar of the Confederation of Rimward Worlds represented 47 species on the galaxy's outer edge. Veltar admitted that human economic projections were correct, and his blue-scaled features showed embarrassment. For 800 years, my people have paid tribute, believing it necessary for survival, he said. We recently discovered we have actually been impoverishing ourselves to enrich the founding races. Dr. Susan Wright was now heading Earth's Department of Galactic Affairs and presented detailed financial models to the growing number of secret diplomatic contacts. The tribute system is economically unsustainable for most member species, she explained. The founding races have created an elaborate pyramid scheme disguised as governmental taxation. Word spread through underground communication networks as species discovered what humans had already calculated. The galactic economy was fundamentally rigged against newer members. Tribute payments exceeded the value of all services received from the Galactic Council by an average of 300%. President Matt Sullivan was broadcasting on encrypted channels that bypassed council monitoring and addressed the growing resistance movement. Freedom is not just humanity's birthright, he said. Every intelligent species deserves the right to determine its own destiny without paying protection money to galactic bullies. The first species to publicly withdraw from the tribute system were the Altair Federation, which was a collection of 6 aquatic worlds that had joined the Council only 2 centuries earlier. Their announcement sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Prime Minister Wexhigh declared from her underwater capital that the Altair Federation formally withdraws from all tribute obligations. We will honor existing trade agreements and maintain diplomatic relations, but we refuse to continue funding a system that impoverishes our people for others' benefit. High Counselor Zektar's response was swift and brutal. Vorthan battle fleets moved to blockade Altair space within days, while Council propaganda networks denounced the human virus that was supposedly infecting galactic civilization with chaos and rebellion. However, the Vorthan Empire discovered that blockading humans was very different from blockading other species. When Altair trade ships requested passage through human space to avoid the blockade, Admiral Kate Phillips personally escorted the first convoy. She announced that any attempt to interfere with legitimate commerce in human space will be met with defensive force as her fleet shepherded dozens of Altair vessels past waiting Vorthan interceptors. The first battle of the new Galactic War erupted when Vorthan ships attempted to force the convoy to halt. Captain Danny Rodriguez commanded the UES Wolverine and engaged 3 Vorthan cruisers in humanity's first formal fleet action. The engagement lasted 27 minutes and demonstrated the technological gap that had developed during humanity's isolation. Human ships used quantum jump drives to appear inside Vorthan formations and launched self-guided torpedo swarms that overwhelmed enemy point defenses and employed energy weapons that bypassed traditional shielding technologies. 2. Vorthan cruisers were destroyed outright while the third limped away with severe damage. The Wolverine suffered only minor hull scoring. News of the victory spread throughout the galaxy within hours, carried by underground networks that the Council could not fully monitor. For the first time in galactic history, founding race ships had been defeated in open combat by a newer species. The victory had profound psychological effects. Species that had accepted Vorthan military superiority as a fact of nature suddenly realized that the Emperor had no clothes. If humans could defeat Vorthan fleets, what other assumptions about galactic hierarchy might be wrong? Dr. Wright received increasingly urgent diplomatic messages from species across the galaxy. The Deneb Consortium, representing 12 industrial worlds, secretly offered to provide manufacturing support for human military expansion. The Silicon League, which was a network of artificial intelligence species, shared advanced computational technologies in exchange for protection from expected Council retaliation. Most significantly, the Centauri Republic, which was one of the oldest non-founding members of the Council, formally announced its withdrawal from the tribute system. Chancellor Beth Morrison explained the decision in a historic broadcast. For 1,000 years, the Centauri Republic has faithfully paid tribute, believing it necessary for galactic stability, she said. Recent events have demonstrated that we were subsidizing our own oppression, and no more. The Centauri withdrawal created a crisis for the Council. Unlike newer species, Centauri space controlled several critical trade routes and contained some of the galaxy's most productive industrial worlds. Losing Centauri tribute would create significant budget shortfalls for the founding races. High Counselor Zektar convened an emergency session to address the spreading rebellion. The humans have poisoned galactic civilization with their primitive concepts of independence, he declared. This cancer must be cut out before it destroys everything we have built. Counselor Thexvia of the Nexari supported military escalation. The tribute system maintains order, she said. Without it, the galaxy will descend into chaos and warfare, and we must demonstrate that rebellion has consequences. However, Counselor Vexmore of the Hive Collective expressed growing concern. Our military losses against human forces exceed all projections, he said. Their technology appears specifically designed to counter our advantages, and perhaps negotiation would be more prudent. The debate revealed growing fractures within the Council itself. The Hive Collective had lost over 200 ships in various skirmishes with human forces, while Vorthan fleets were discovering that their traditional tactics were ineffective against human adaptive strategies. Ambassador Carter received intelligence about the Council's internal debates from sources within several founding race governments. They are scared, she reported to President Sullivan. For 3,000 years, they have maintained power through technological superiority and overwhelming force. Suddenly, they are facing opponents who can match their technology and exceed their tactical flexibility. The intelligence proved accurate when the Nexari, traditionally the most diplomatically flexible of the founding races, secretly approached human representatives about potential ceasefire terms. Sub-Counselor Hexavia admitted during encrypted negotiations that the current situation benefits no one. Perhaps accommodations could be reached that preserve galactic stability while addressing legitimate concerns about the tribute system. However, humanity's response surprised even their allies. Rather than negotiating for reduced tribute or special exemptions, humans demanded fundamental changes to the entire galactic system. President Sullivan declared that we are not interested in becoming privileged members of an oppressive system. We want genuine democracy and economic equality and an end to the founding race's stranglehold on galactic government. The demands were revolutionary. In 3,000 years, no species had ever questioned the fundamental structure of galactic civilization. Humans were not just refusing tribute, but were challenging the entire foundation of Council authority. As word spread about humanity's demands, something unprecedented began happening throughout the galaxy. Species started holding democratic referendums on Council membership. For the first time in galactic history, ordinary citizens were being asked whether they wanted to continue paying tribute to maintain the existing system. The results were overwhelming. Species after species voted to withdraw from tribute obligations, creating a cascade of rebellion that threatened the very existence of the Galactic Council as it had existed for millennia.